Let's talk about Tate, Corey. You seemed a little you got on Twitter talking about Tate Rodemaker.
I did. Man, I just couldn't have been more impressed with what he did today. And he hadn't done much the last 2 days. I'll leave it at that. But today he came out there and everything just seemed different with the whole offense. He just gets it out on time. He looked like he did in the spring. He carried it over from the spring to the point where he was so good today. And again, it's 1 day in pads. But I'm also stacking it on what he did in the spring. That you're like, okay, man, maybe it wouldn't be the end of the world if 13 got hurt. You still don't want that. 13, Jordan Travis is still your starter, but you feel good. You feel better about a backup quarterback, I think, than you have here in a while. It would have to maybe be a different offense with him running the show, but I still think it could be a productive one with some mistakes and some growing pains, obviously.
2 reasons why, though. The first is that if he has to come in and play, they have an offensive line now that can give him the time to throw in the pocket in a way that he hasn't had since he's been here, right?
100%.
So he can let things develop. And what is his strength? I think his strength is throwing the ball down the seam. He's very accurate. The biggest plays that come down the seam in these practices are not from Jordan Travis. They are from Tate Rodemaker every time. Now, what it does is a couple of things. It reminds you where Jordan has got to get better. It reminds you kind of the lament that you have that they don't have a good enough receiving core to actually make that a real competition. What I mean by that is this could turn into a Jordan Travis, Tate Rodemaker competition if, coupled with that better offensive line, they had a bevy of receivers you trusted. But they don't.
Like game-changing type
right,
receivers,
or even one game-changing wide receiver. They don't. And because they don't, Tate can't win the job. That's not a knock on Jordan as much as it is praise for Tate as a thrower. He's a good thrower of the football. We've said this. The three of us have taken turns saying that if you were just talking about a passer, Tate's a better passer, period. He just is. But they don't have, in the past, they haven't had the offensive line to protect him, to let those routes develop. 2, they don't have enough talent at wide receiver for that to be the case. And 3, unfortunately for Tate, when he has been given an opportunity to play, he hadn't played well.
I was going to say, you touched on 2 things there. One is, excuse me, that we do need to see what Tate does under the lights, you know, because the opportunities he has not gone particularly well.
They haven't.
There were some unfair situations.
Well, spring was nonsense.
But even going back to, his freshman year when he got thrown out there, a lot of that was unfair.
Yeah.
So, but it happened. And so we need to see it on a Saturday or Friday night or whatever it is. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is the way you're saying that, though, it makes it sound like, it goes along with the theory that Jordan is the best option only because of his legs. And I don't think that's true. I think Jordan can be, and I have not been disappointed by him in this preseason. I think he can be a very effective, very good college quarterback because of what he does do throwing, but mostly because exactly, because of all the tools he has. So that's my point. It implies, the way you phrased it, I think it would imply to some people that he's only got the job because of legs. He can throw the ball too.
I think we agree that it implies that, and I can hear it. I can hear where somebody would hear that and go, oh. But I also think it points out Jordan's limitations. It's 6 in one, half dozen the other. I think that we're saying that Jordan has holes in his game, as does Tate.
Right.
And when we highlight the other's strength, it seems to maybe take away from the other guy, when it really is just telling you that they both are somewhat limited. They don't have an elite quarterback here.
I am excited to see what Jordan can do with an offensive line and better receivers. Now,
I am too.
They're not dominant receivers. We haven't seen anybody at receiver that's dominant or close to it, but they will be better. I think they're
better across the board. Yeah, and I feel like with Jordan, and it happened today. Like they had a drive. They started the ball at the 25-yard line, and they had a drive in for a touchdown where he didn't throw a pass. Trayshawn had what probably would have been a 25-yard touchdown, and this against the first-team defense. Now they're mixing and matching up front, but still, basically, and the 2 safeties aren't starters. But still, it's the one defense, and Trayshawn takes a 25-yard run. I don't think that happens if Tate Rodemaker's the quarterback. I think just Jordan Travis's presence makes the offense better because you have to account for other things that you don't when Tate Rodemaker is the quarterback, and that's why we'd say if he had great weapons outside, you might flip your whole offense to take it. I mean, I think Tate has some pretty unique skills. I mean, and it's good to know that he has potential. Like, we've seen it now. We don't know what it'll look like under the lights, and maybe he's just one of those guys that it doesn't click under lights.
And I think we get into
we
this.
know there's a ceiling there that I didn't know was there before the spring.
Then I think we get into this trap, like the three of us do. We just get into this trap of either, I don't think we're trying to placate to any one person, or I don't think we're rooting for any particular person, but we know that if we praise this person's strength and this guy and point out this guy's weakness, that it does come across as we're choosing sides. And I don't mean it to sound like that. I just think I can unequivocally say that Tate Rodemaker is a better passer of the football than Jordan Travis.
Well, and I can say he's better than I thought he was.
So,
I thought last year, I'm like, man, this guy, why, if he can't even beat out Mackenzie Milton for second string, why is he on this team?
That is disappointing.
Then this spring happened, and I'm like, okay, we talked about him a lot.
But Ira, if you think about it this way, so just to our point, remember, Ira, you rightfully went back at him last year when he was ripping Tate. And you're like, hold on. That's the
and I think what's really cool about us having the access to watch practice is being able to see the way guys develop, because as media and fans who only get to see Saturdays.
Yeah.
And we make these judgments based on what the first time we see a guy. And by seeing these practices and seeing the development over time, you see how that process works. And that's why I really appreciate Norvell letting us out there, because another guy to me is like Joshua Burrell. Joshua Burrell missed all of last year. He was a freshman wide receiver, came in with Malik McLean and had surgery, missed the whole season. The first time we saw him really was this spring. We were not very impressed. I'm telling you, like this, I don't know that he's going to contribute this season, but from what we've seen in preseason, there's something there. He could be a guy that could play for Florida State at wide receiver that I didn't know in the spring. So if I only saw him in the, at the spring game, for example, or something like that, I would never think, okay, there's anything there. So there's a lot of guys like that now we've seen. Tate's probably the best example, but there's a lot of guys that we see. Now we see what coaches see and why it's important to kind of invest that time.
Well, it's important too not to give up on guys, right? I mean, like if you brought a guy in for a reason,
DJ Lundy,
DJ
Lundy's
a really good example.
He's flashing
a lot. And I would
Derek
say,
McClendon.
And going back to Tate real quick, and what it does for a team is like, you look, man, Tate is catching a snap, seeing it, getting rid of it quick. Like he sees it quicker. And I think I'm fair. I'm okay in saying this, and I just think he sees it quicker than Jordan maybe.
I think he might literally
and I think he sees it quicker.
Well, he's taller.
He's a lot taller.
Yeah.
But he also, again, their natures are different. Jordan Travis never turns the ball over.
That was my point. Is that Jordan Travis is a very conservative kid by nature. I think.
And the other kid
Tate
kind of
lets it rip, and Tate let it rip down the field. Tate let it rip down the field to the tune of like an 80-yard drive with great throws all over the field to a bunch of different guys, catching it, seeing it, letting it rip. Jordan Travis gets the ball in the very next series and makes, I thought, his best throw of the day. He hits Pittman for about a 15-yard gain, middle of the field, sees it, trusts it, and rips it. And you talk about raising the level of the people you're competing against. And I don't think Jordan and Tate are in competition, but there's a challenge that was thrown down when you see your backup go do what he just did. And I thought
with
Jordan
ease, by the way, he went right down the field.
It was like that day last spring. Remember that one day when we walked out of practice?
We were like stunned.
Because they went back and
forth.
They
both lit it up,
So
that
was
important
good.
today.
Just good. That's just good for the whole team. It's good for the whole offense to have something like that happen. Having Tate have a drive like that is good for Jordan Travis. Because it's like, all right, well, I need to start getting it to these guys quicker too. And he did.
Seminole headlines, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV.